The range hall falls silent, and every gaze turns inward. A steel table waits under sharp lights in the center lane. A rifle lies in pieces across cold metal. Trainees lean on the rail and trade quiet jokes with smirks. They smirk because the woman is new, quiet, and unproven. She is a medic by trade and a shooter by choice. Her name is Layla, and her hands look steady and calm. She keeps her eyes on the parts and says nothing. One speaks in a flat voice that carries through the room. Disarm complete, and time starts on my mark. Assemble function check fire, 3 plates. Then safe the weapon. No restarts, no excuses, and no mercy today. The captain watches from the catwalk high above the lanes. Near the door, a spotter holds a slate and a pen. He writes, "Wind mirage and light angles with careful strokes. He will read the air when the shooting begins soon." Layla listens to the rules and lets them pass like water. She loosens her jaw and maps the build. Mind to hand to steel in a clean, unbroken line. A timer near her elbow glows red like a stern eye. Someone whispers that the medic will time out for sure. Someone else says she will drop a pin and freeze. Layla keeps her breath slow and her gaze forward. On a hot street last year, she arrived late, to pain. A life slipped away while the siren cried far off. She decided that late help is not enough anymore. She chose the rifle to reach trouble sooner and stop harm. The instructor lifts his hand and the room freezes still. The buzzer screams and the test begins without a pause. Layla moves with purpose and pulls parts into working shape. Bolt meets carrier and the cam pin turns and locks. Gas key checked and charging handle aligned with quiet clicks. Upper meets lower and the pins slide. Home true. Her breathing stays even so her sight will not shake. Scope rings open and the optic seats with a sure click. She checks eye relief, then sets torque by calm memory. The whisper on the rail fades as her speed builds. The instructor leans closer and waits for a mistake. The spotter watches flags and lifts his slate to right. Left to right, half value with gusts. He notes mirage bends over the berm like wavering glass. Layla glances at the timer and denies its red power. She taps each, small part. With a light confirming touch, detent, seated spring-seated roll pin, seated without strain. Her world narrows to pattern feel, breath and steady hands. She sets the rifle on the rest and checks level. Parallax set, diopter clear turrets 2, 0 and locked. She drops to prone and pulls the sling tight across back. Her cheek finds the stock and her eye fills the scope. The reticle drifts, then settles over waiting steel. She rides her breath down and holds the quiet bottom. The first plate waits at 600 yards, bright and flat. The second sits at 800 beside a pale scar. The third at 1,000 looks small as a coin. Wind flags pop and fall and then pop again. The spotter kneels at her left and speaks low. Wind building. Left to right, half to full in pulses. Watch the rag by the second post and break on drop. Layla nods once and sets her finger on the wall. The captain shifts above and the catwalk gives a creak. The clipboard scratches as the instructor draws a thin line. The trainees lean closer and one of them stops smirking. Layla thinks of the street and the late cold siren. Arrive before the hurt and stand steady when you arrive. Her heartbeat slows and a calm opens like a door. She lifts her head a hair and scans the table. Nothing missing, she tells herself. Then she checks again, carefully. Springs present, pins present, bolt present, carrier present and secure. Charging handle present, scope rings present, cloth present, sling present. She watches the second flag dip, rise and dip again. She matches its rhythm so her break will be clean. Her eye returns to the reticle and the plate steadies. She breathes out and feels the trigger wall under finger. A thin chill moves across her neck and down spine. She does not know why, so she looks to the tray. Her gaze lands on a neat, empty corner in plain view. The rifle feels heavier in her hands than before. She checks bolt and carrier and the smooth cam path. She checks lower and trigger and the quiet, safety. She checks charging handle, the locks, and the gas key. Her breath hitches, then steadies by stubborn will. The timer burns at the edge of her sight. The spotter waits. The captain waits. The room waits. Layla stares at the clean, empty corner without, blinking. A single question rises like smoke and will not fade. Where is the firing pin? The timer glares red and Layla refuses to blink. A missing pin haunts the table like a hidden trap. Smirks line the rail waiting for panic and sudden failure. Layla gives nothing back and breathes slow and steady now. Her hands map parts with quiet, order, and steady purpose. She opens her pouch and spills tools, cloth, and oil. A steel pin rolls to the edge and waits there. She catches it fast and lifts it toward clear light, not the issued pin yet strong enough to serve today. It belongs to the cleaning kit allowed by posted rules. Rafi studies flags and mirage and speaks in low tones. Left to right building, hold a half at 600. Brake on the drop, not before and not after either. Layla checks length and fit by touch and stubborn memory. She uses the bolt as guide, the cam path ruler. The instructor scowls, but the board behind him shows rules. The paint says issued kit parts are permitted for emergencies. Layla seats the pin and feels a clean, sure click. She locks the bolt and trusts. The quiet message inside the rifle wakes under her palms like a calm animal. She drops to prone and tightens the sling across back. The reticle floats, then steadies on the first plate ahead. Wind shoves the flags and heat shimmer leans hard today. Not yet, she thinks and rides the gust down. Slow. The shove eases and the sight sits quiet now again. She builds pressure against the clean trigger wall patiently inside. The shot breaks clean and the barrel returns straight back. Downrange steel. Rings bright and the room exhales once together. Smirks fade like chalk in rain along the rail line. Rafi updates the hold as the air turns rough again. Add a touch more at 800 ride second dip. The second plate waits beside a pale scar. From practice. She drifts the reticle into wind and keeps shoulders quiet. Her cheek stays soft on the stock and eye calm. The wind bumps, then drops, then bumps again, like heartbeat. She takes the second drop and breaks the shot clean. The plate tilts, throws a spark, and rings. Thin true boots stop scraping concrete, and the captain steps forward, watching the catwalk boards give one careful creak above her lane. The instructor stares at rules like pride could still live. Layla feeds around and sets for the far plate. The circle looks small as a coin at world edge. Rafi gives a longer call because wind near berm twists, full value, then quartering, then full again. Wait for breath, take the quiet gap and refuse to chase teasing gusts. She nods and lets two slow breaths drift like clouds. A thin thread of smoke tilts, right hangs, then softens. Her mind empties, leaving sight, breath, and a distant coin. Her finger finds the wall, the rifle becomes a line. The break is soft, the recoil straight. The scope home. Heat wavers in the glass during one careful measured beat. Then the far plate winks silver and begins swaying slowly. Air leaves the room like tide and shoulders drop together. Rafi raises his slate and writes the time slowly there. Layla safes and clears, then shows an empty well, calmly. She lays the rifle down gently like a warm bird. The instructor studies the clock, the board, then her hands. He wants to argue, yet the proof sings across steel. He nods once and speaks with board. Voice that shakes drill complete time. Recorded return to stand by now, please. Those who smirk now study boots and adjust loose collars. One rubs his neck, another searches the concrete for dust. Layla lifts the field pin and sets it on cloth. She wipes oil from her thumb and pockets the pin. Rafi approaches with the slate pressed close like a secret. He stops by the captain, glancing between numbers and Layla. The captain waits in stillness while the room grows quiet. A fan squeaks once, a heel taps. Once, then stops. Warm oil and iron scent the air like soft rain. Rafi leans toward the captain and speaks for him alone. "That is her record time." He whispers, almost smiling now. The words fall soft yet heavy like a hidden metal. Layla hears them clearly, because the hall holds silence still. Her pulse hits hard once, then settles into easy rhythm. It is not only speed, she thinks, but steady control. It is a promise to reach trouble sooner and help. The captain allows a shadowed nod. Then hides it fast. He points the instructor to clockboard and kit list. Make the note file the test. Keep the rules clean. Rafi turns to speak, but a low siren rises nearby. The siren climbs the walls like a thin blade of ice. The range hall goes quiet, and every breath sounds loud. The captain lifts his radio and points to the exit. Rafi closes his slate and meets Layla with steady eyes. "Convoy hit outside the city," he says with no drama. One truck burning possible hostages and scattered shooters in side streets. Bags open, belts snap, and boots pound the concrete in haste. Layla gathers her rifle and the field pin from training. She remembers the smirks, then the ringing steel and the silence. She will not be late if her hands can help. Today, engines cough awake and the column pushes through the front gate. Smoke marks the sky ahead like a warning finger of ash. "Rooftop there," he says, "south view of the lane," and mark it. Layla nods and checks bolt optic sling and magazines with care. Her breath finds rhythm and steadies her fingers over the metal. This is not a test. She thinks this is duty. The truck shudders to a stop and the team spills. Heat climbs from. The stone and fuel stings. The air children watch from doorways until older hands guide them back. Windows open a crack, then close again, with shy caution. Rafi leads upstairs, past laundry and plants and chipped paint. They reach the roof and slide. Behind a short brick wall, Layla builds a nest with pack jacket and a coiled hose. She wipes dust from the scope and sets her sling. No flags up here, so she reads wires and paper. Mirage lifts like thin smoke and leans, right then left. Rafi settles. Behind glass like a lighthouse against storm. 2 roads away, the ambush sits like an open wound. One troop truck smolders in the lane with doors wide. Another idles crooked with cracked glass and heat-warped paint. Figures run in bursts between carts. Flame and broken shadows. Layla tracks movement but searches for the shape that hunts. Rafi whispers blue balcony with the long banner near corner. A glint shows, then hides like a blinking eye in sun counter sniper. He says, and a spotter by the rail. They will punish height if we stand tall. Even once, Layla lowers herself until only the optic peaks the gap. She builds a low angle through a gap in mortar. Her cheek rests soft, and her shoulder sets calm and firm. Rafi calls, wind low right quarter, value with sudden pushes. His words come even and give her trust a foothold. She dials 2 small marks and waits for the lull. A wounded soldier crawls and tries to drag another farther. He points toward a van at the far end. A door slides and a hooded figure shoves a hostage. Layla follows the van and a coil tightens inside. She thinks of reach and time and lives not of pride. Rafi sets range, angle, and plan in trimmed words. Disable the van without sending shards toward the hostage, then smudge the balcony view, so it cannot strike. Layla nods and holds because wind is wrong for tires. Gusts bend the path like a snake, sliding through grass. The lull will come. It always comes. She waits patient. Record time means nothing now. Purpose is the only clock. She holds breath and picture of the next two moves. The van noses forward and a woman points and cries. Sound stacks like a wave along the stone street. Boots clatter on stairs behind and a shout flickers. Rafi glances back, then locks again. To the glass-friendly patrol moving, he says, "Hold your lane and plan." On the blue balcony, the spotter taps the rail twice. Small, quiet, fast, like a metronome counting down harm. Layla studies rhythm and reads a script in shoulders. Tap, prepare, tap. Hold fire, she thinks while watching. The shooter leans on his right elbow and lifts chin. His blink grows long before each break on the trigger. Habit becomes a sign, and she reads it without blinking. Her reticle drifts to the metal strip along balcony. Not the face, not the chest, the rail by elbow. A strike there can steal balance and ruin the aim. Rafi whispers quarter right and 1/10 low for heat. Layla rides roof wind and lets the inner coil release. The van edges into the cross street and hostage bows. She builds pressure as the shooter begins his long blink. She accepts the gift and breaks the shot with patience. Sparks jump from the rail and the shooter flinches wide. The spotter ducks, grabs his partner, and their rhythm breaks Layla. Slides to the van tire and holds through dust. The lull is brief but enough, and the trigger moves. Rubber tears with a spit, and the wheel drops hard. The van skews and stops at an angle across lane. Shouts multiply and doors slam and hostage presses. Flat Rafi calls good disable, now guard the balcony return. Layla tucks low as chips of brick jump and hum. A round scars the top row and draws a chalk line. Dust coats her lips and tongue, and she swallows grit. Rafi starts to speak, then freezes, and his eyes sharpen. He leans a little closer, and his voice turns tight. "We have been seen," he says. "They have our lens." Layla angles the scope and sees the enemy spotter staring. The glint on their glass burns like a tiny winter sun. The rooftop door rattles. Behind them, and a heavy boot hits. The captain speaks on the radio, and all channels wake. "Hold the roof. Hold the lane. Hold the hostage," he orders. Layla plants her elbows and draws one more deep breath. The next minute will decide if the street bends or breaks. The door handle begins to turn and the metal groans. Heat presses close and the hallway breathes heavy. The door jerks and the old metal groans in pain. Rafi lifts a hand in warning and settles his breath. Layla sinks lower behind the wall and checks her sling. Her rifle feels long for this tight square of roof. Footsteps roll in the stairwell like stones down a chute. Keys rattle once, then fall quiet as breath gathers near. She wants control, and she wants the hostage alive. She slides the bolt and lays the rifle tight to bricks. Her sidearm rests light against her ribs, ready to serve. She will, not fireblind into a doorway if she can help it. The handle turns again, and a boot hammers the wood. Rafi counts under breath. 3, then 2, then 1. The door flies open, and a young fighter rushes in. A short blade flashes like water in harsh light. Another fighter follows with a long rifle and a hard shout. Layla snaps the sling and whips the stock across a wrist. The blade skips away and clinks near a roof drain. Rafi crashes into the second fighter and hooks a leg behind. They roll and kick. Across gravel near the parapet edge, Layla loops the sling and turns the first fighter with steady force. The second fighter tears free and lifts the long rifle again. Rafi shoves the barrel up and the shot slaps open. Sky, chips of brick skitter, and hum across the roof. Layla drives the first fighter down and boots the blade away. She draws her sidearm and angles her body to shield the street. One warning round barks high and the second fighter freezes. Rafi rips the rifle free and slides it under a panel. He binds the second fighter with a cable from a coiled bundle. Layla rips a cloth strap and ties the wrists of the first wind, tugs the laundry lines, and turns shirts into pale flags. Across the lane, the blue balcony flickers with motion and glare. The enemy spotter peeks, then hides, then peeks again like a lizard. The shooter leans on his right elbow and builds a slow breath. Their rhythm returns like a drum that wants to own the street. Rafi slides behind the glass and calls. Wind with crisp care, quarter. Right building with sudden lows near the alley mouth. Layla crawls to a second notch, where a broken pipe cuts a slit. She nests the rifle in a cradle of jacket and hose. Her breath grows slow and the reticle swims. Then, steadies on the rail. She does not aim for a face, she aims for balance. Take the balance and the aim will fall. She waits for the long blink that comes before each shot. The blink comes, and she presses through the clean wall of the trigger. Sparks jump from the rail, and the shooter flinches wide again. The spotter ducks and waves a hand like a broken fan. Layla uses the chance and scrubs their sight with dust. She rakes dry pots and sends soil into the air. A thin brown veil hangs between balcony and lane. Rafi nods with his eyes and shifts to the van instead. Down the block, the disabled van sits crooked across the road. Men shove the hostage through a door with a dented metal shutter. The shutter rattles closed, then opens a hand, span for a shout. A shadow waves from inside, and another van creeps back. Layla tastes iron and grit and knows time is burning. She points, and Rafi traces her finger to the shop sign. Old machines inside a workshop, a grinder, a press, and a hoist. That space will kill sight and steal time if they move. We need a lower angle, and we need it fast. Rafi sweeps the roof edge and marks a gap to the next building. Laundry ropes sag between corners, and a rusted ladder clings to a wall. Layla clips the sling to a pipe and lowers her weight slow. She steps onto a narrow ledge and shuffles the span of brick. Rafi passes the rifle down and keeps the glass in his hand. Boots scratch stone, and breath comes in quick, small pulls. Below them, people crouch, in doorways and whisper like wind in grass. A child peeks out, and a mother draws him back with a soft arm. Layla reaches the far roof and rolls behind a low water tank. Rafi lands beside her and checks the view with a fast sweep. The workshop door fills the scope like a rough gray mouth. A side door shows a chain and a cheap lock with rust. A fire extinguisher leans near the tank under a film. Layla cracks it and sprays white cover to cross over. Boots pound the stair hut, and the handle rattles hard. The stair hut shakes and the handle screams against metal. Rafi lifts the extinguisher and floods the gap with white. Layla stays low and guides him across the narrow ledge. Grit bites knees and shoes slip, then catch like fish on a line. They reach the next roof and fold behind a short water tank. There he whispers the dented shutter and the side door chain. 2 men inside and a third by the window with a rifle. She needs a stronger base or each shot will float on gusts. Inside sit wrenches, tape a folded rag, and a small car. Jack Layla stacks the box, the jack and her pack to form a cradle. She winds tape around the pile so nothing slips when recoil talks. Her cheek meets the stock and her shoulder settles into the sling. Quarter right, he says with sharp dips near the gutter and vent. She wants to break the side door chain and open a path. Then she will pin the rifle inside so it cannot watch the lane. The hostage keeps still as if trying to turn invisible and small. She remembers. A hand going slack while smoke rose from a road. Not again, she tells herself, not, if reach can change the end. They moved, he says the enemy pair left the rail and shifted inside. They are covering the door from shadow and waiting for a van. The alley. Behind will carry them out if the door stays locked. If we do not open it, we lose the hostage to the back street. Layla lowers the reticle to the chain on the side door. She waits for a quiet moment when the paper by the gutter hangs straight. Rafi counts gusts like a drummer keeping time for a choir. 3 beats, then a drop. Then 2 beats. Then a drop. On the second drop, He whispers now, and she settles and presses. The lock spits, sparks, and the chain jumps and gapes like a cut lip. Air rushes in, and a shout flares from the shop. And then another. The hostage flinches and turns his face toward the new light. Layla glides to a steel beam that hugs the window frame tight. Rafi spots a barrel nosing out as if sniffing the air. "Pin the barrel," he says, "and make them shift their nest." Layla takes a low hold to skip the round off the beam. She breathes, rides the sway, and sends the shot on a calm line. Metal screams, and the barrel jerks back like a struck snake. Rafi nods and says, "Good pressure. Keep them blind, keep the path open." Boots stamp inside and a van engine coughs in the alley behind. "We have little time," he says 1 minute before they load and flee. Layla checks her magazines and finds only one still full enough. She feeds it in and taps the release with her thumb like a prayer. Her world shrinks to breath sight and the slow throb in her hands. She draws the sling tighter until her shoulder sings like a wire. Voices pile below a command, a curse, a plea, and a raw laugh. The hostage looks at the side door, then at the floor, then back again. He rocks forward, then stills as a shadow crosses the light by the chain. Layla shifts an inch to gain a cleaner lane into the shop. Her improvised cradle holds, and the jack does not slip or groan. Rafi murmurs, "Watch the beam glow and the papers near the gutter. Take the next soft pocket and do not chase a sharp gust." She breathes once, twice, and the sight grows gentle and clear. A figure moves and throws a hand toward the hostage and the door. Another figure shoulders a long weapon and sweeps the opening with the muzzle. Layla sends fear into the floor and keeps only the work in her body. Her finger finds the wall, and her back settles like a rooted tree. She sees the next pocket of quiet open like a small lake. Rafi counts down in a whisper that barely touches the air. 3, then 2, then 1, and the room becomes a drawn map. The beam, the chain, the lock, the weapon, the hostage, the way out. Her heart strikes once and levels into a long, steady calm. She feels the small give of the trigger and greets its truth. But the cradle holds and the sight refuses to jump away. The hostage tenses like a race runner. He whispers last minute, "Layla, last clean window before they vanish." She narrows her world until it is a thin silver thread of aim. Noise falls back, and her pulse turns to a hush of wind. Only the soft pull of the trigger remains, with the promise it carries. She thinks not of record time, but of a person walking, out alive. Her breath drifts down to the quiet bottom, where stillness waits. The sight steadies, and the next pocket of calm spreads like clear water. She commits her will and lets the break begin, like a door swinging in light.